Goodness me, year three. It seems such a long time ago that we did our online learning together. Actually, it's not that long ago, is it at all? But it does seem like quite a while ago. And excitingly, this may well be the last lot of English lessons, the last lot of literacy lessons that we do online. So we are going to start our new theme for the moment. And that theme is Little Red Riding Hood. And I'm sure it's a story that you all know incredibly well. But with all fairy tales, there are lots of different versions. Okay, and lots of because it's a fairy tale, what will happen is some people will include different characters, and there might be little bits in other stories that aren't included in some fairy tales that you might read. So the fairy tale that we are going to do today, I've got a little video for you to watch. Actually, it's not a little video, it's quite a long video. So we will split it up into separate bits so that you can watch it. However, I've just started to record this, and my neighbours have decided that they're going to try out their new industrial hedge cutter. So we are going to put our fingers crossed and hope that it does not interrupt our lesson too much. Otherwise, they will have Mrs. Pleasure to deal with. So the first thing we are going to do is, again, we are going to keep our fingers crossed, and I am going to try and share this video with you. And we are going to hope that it all works smashingly well. So this is a version of Little Red Riding Hood, okay? Because it's being read, it saves my voice, saves your eyes having to read it, okay? It's just a different way of learning. So let's have a look. Let's keep all of those fingers crossed. And I am going to try. I'm going to share some of it with you, and then we will stop and have a think about it.
Once upon a time, there was a little girl, and her name was Little Red Riding Hood. And they called her that because she had a little red hood and a red riding cape. She lived in a small cottage right on the edge of the wood. And one day, she walked to the cottage, opened the door, walked into the kitchen. And there was her mother. And her mother was very busy because she was putting food into a picnic basket. Little Red Riding Hood said, "Mother, why are you putting food into a picnic basket?" And the mother said, "Oh, Little Red Riding Hood, you know your granny who lives in the middle of the wood? Well, she's not very well at all. She's poorly. So what I'm doing is putting some food in the picnic basket to make her feel a bit better. Little Red Riding Hood, would you like to bring this picnic basket to your granny?" "Oh, yes, please, Mum," said the girl. And so she said goodbye to her mum, took the basket, skipped out of the door, and skipped towards the wood. When she stepped into the wood, she noticed that the wood was alive with sound. There were birds chattering in the trees and small animals rustling through the undergrowth. She felt very happy looking at the flowers as she passed them, and she skipped into the middle of the wood. And then she saw the woodcutter. He was standing on the path, and he said, "Well, hello, Little Red Riding Hood. How are you today?" "I'm very well, woodcutter." "Oh, good girl. What are you doing in the wood today?" "Well, my granny's very poorly, so I'm bringing her some food to make her feel a bit better." "Oh, you are a good, kind girl, Little Red Riding Hood, and I won't keep you, but please, take this piece of advice. Never leave the path, because there are things in this wood which aren't very good." "Oh, all right, woodcutter, I'll remember." Little Red Riding Hood continued her journey, and as she skipped along, the beautiful, friendly silver birch trees and the big, generous oak trees were replaced by tall, dark pine trees. And soon the wood became very dark. As she slowed down and began to walk, she had a feeling that she was being watched. So she looked from side to side. And there, in the leathery blackness of the wood, she saw two yellow eyes watching her. She stopped, and the wolf stepped out of the darkness. He stepped onto the path and looked at her. Little Red Riding Hood. She was only a little girl, and the wolf was really big. But she decided to be polite, and she looked at the wolf and she said, "Good morning, Mr. Wolf." "Good morning, little girl. What is a little girl doing in the deep, dark wood?" "Well, I've got a basket of food because my granny is very poorly, and this food will make her feel a bit better." "Oh, you are a very good girl for looking after your granny. I won't delay you, little girl. I hope you get to the cottage quickly."
Okay, so we will stop that there. And as I said, oh, hang on a second. He's still going on. There we go. That was still going on there a minute. So, as I said, that is a slightly different version to the one that you might know. You might have come across a different version where there's no woodcutter, or where there are slightly different characters. Now, that was a really great storytelling of the start of Little Red Riding Hood. But I think the reader of that story could have done a little bit better. I think when he is describing certain things in that story, we could have more information. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. We are going to be thinking about how we can add description into that story. And you know what I'm going to say. We are going to be looking at descriptive language. Okay, and it's that descriptive language that will always add detail for our readers. Now, I've done so many of these with you, haven't I, where I've been saying that this sort of information means that as a reader, I can imagine what you are trying to describe for me. Okay, so when the gentleman was talking about the flowers in the wood, tell me what flowers are in the wood. Okay, maybe they're red, maybe they're yellow, maybe they're gigantic, maybe they're tiny primroses. I don't know. That is the information that I want you to try and add to this story. Okay, so let's have a think. First of all, let's have a think about the character, Little Red Riding Hood. What do we think when we hear that name? What is the first image that pops into our head? Have a think. Okay, you may have something that looks a bit like that. Something that looks a bit like that. Something that looks a bit like that. Or you might even be thinking of something that looks like that. Okay, what do they all have in common? What has been described in her very odd name, which automatically makes us think of how she looks? Hopefully you've said a Red Riding Hood. So that's an old-fashioned word for a cape. Okay, all of these pictures have similarities, don't they? Okay, yes, some of them are cartoons. Yes, some of them are sort of CGI. This is from Revolting Rhymes. And yes, this is an actual person from a film, but they all have similarities, don't they? Okay, there is nothing more frustrating than reading a book and having something in your mind and then watching a film and that person who is playing the character is completely different to the one you imagined. Okay, yes, all of these look slightly different, but they've all got similarities, haven't they? And that one similarity is that she's got some sort of Red Riding Hood. Okay. We are going to be looking at adjectives today, year 3, and I know you know what adjectives are. Okay, and I know you're thinking, oh, Mrs. Pledger, come on, we know what adjectives are, but adjectives are so important to our writing. Okay, and their job is to describe the noun. Oh, excuse me. Their job is to give extra added description of something. Okay, so if I said to you, go and get me a pen, that doesn't help you, does it? Go and get me a red pen and you know exactly what you're looking for. So those adjectives are always important. We might say, look at the girl over there. Now, if we're in class, there could be 15, 16, 17 girls in the class. If I say, go look at the sad girl over there, and there is one girl who is crying, you know exactly who I mean. So that information is always important for us in real life and when we're doing our writing. But in year 3, we need to use better adjectives. Okay, all that rich language that we are learning from our literacy lessons, from the books that we're reading, okay, we need to make sure that we're making use of that in our writing as well. So we could say that the woods are scary. Okay, that's not bad. That's not a bad adjective. We know they're not particularly nice. But why are they scary? They might be terrifying. They might be creepy. They might be intimidating. Okay, and they are such better adjectives. Okay, this goes back to our World War II descriptions, doesn't it? I'm thinking about those children who were in the pictures. Okay, and we said the children were sad. Okay, the children were sad, but think about how we add emphasis or make those adjectives even more interesting. Now we're in year 3. We're going to think about better adjectives than sad, scary, or an adjective or something like very, very tall. Okay, but maybe they were huge. Maybe they were gigantic. Maybe they were as tall as buildings. Okay, by adding that information rather than just saying very tall, okay, it's making it far more interesting for our reader. So I have picked out some sentences, and I'm going to stop sharing this for a moment. Okay, I have picked out some sentences, and you know that we can't do it on the PowerPoint, so I am going to share it with you, and we are going to go through these sentences together, and we're going to make these really good sentences. We are not going to just accept what these sentences are. We are going to up-level them and make them into year 3 acceptable sentences. So that's there. Okay. She lived in a small cottage right at the edge of the woods. Okay, that's that's an extended sentence because right on the edge of the wood makes it a little bit more interesting. Small cottage. Right, let me get my red pen. She lived in a small cottage right on the edge of the wood. What colour is the cottage? I imagine she lived in a small white cottage. In fact, black and white. You know, like those really old timber framed houses. There's quite a lot of them around here. She lived in a small black and white cottage right on the edge of the wood. Let's describe that wood. What could we have? Right at the edge of the thick tree-filled wood. Let me have a think about that. If it's going to be a wood, it's going to be tree-filled anyway, isn't it? So thick, large wood. Okay, because it's large, because actually there's parts of it that are nice and there's parts of it that aren't very nice at all. So let's have a think about our sentence again. She lived in a small black and white cottage right on the edge of a thick, large wood. Okay, that's slightly better. Let's have a look at our next sentence. She was putting food into a basket. We can do so much better than that. How was she putting food in the basket? Let's think about that. Let's see if we can add an adverb to our sentence. How was she putting it in? Well, she's doing it for her mother, and her mother's poorly. So she was lovingly putting, now, year 3. We are not going to use the word yummy, okay? Because your definition of yummy and my definition of yummy could be completely different. You could say she was putting some yummy food into the basket, and that could be, let me have a think. That could be, I'm trying to think of a food I don't like. What don't I like? That could be fish. Okay, I'm not particularly keen on fish. You might love fish, so that's yummy for you. Fish isn't yummy for me. It could be full of fruit, and that would be yummy for me, but it's not yummy for you. Okay, so we'll try and steer away from yummy, and we put, she was lovely putting pile. Why does that keep on happening in year 3? Piles of fruit and vegetables. I'm going to take out food. She was lovely because she's trying to make it healthy for grandma, isn't she? So if she's trying to give her some food to make her feel better, it's going to be things like piles of fruit and vegetables into a large, oh, we've already used large, wooden basket. She was lovingly putting piles of fruit and vegetables into a wooden basket. And then I'm going to extend that sentence. Covered with a red and white cloth. So can you imagine, you know, those checkered cloths that people always seem to have in these sort of things? I'm imagining that once she's put all the fruit and vegetables into the basket, that's what she puts on top. So she was lovingly putting piles of fruit and vegetables into a wooden basket covered with a red cloth. I like that. Now, when she stepped into the wood, now you can choose here. Are you going to go for the when she stepped into the really nice, lovely part of the wood, or are you going to choose when she stepped into the bit that the woodcutter said wasn't quite as nice? I'm going to go for the bit that wasn't quite as nice, because that is the bit that is quite easy to describe, isn't it? So when she stepped into, how is she stepping? Let's think if we can add a bit of description in there. You're not going to believe this at year 3, but somebody has just knocked on my door. So I'm going to pause it here and go and answer the door. That was my new school shoes being delivered, which is very exciting, but not during the middle of our literacy lesson. It's rather inconvenient. Anyway, where were we? Let's go back to our sentences. And I was just about to say, wasn't I, that we are going to think of how would she step into the woods? Well, I think a really good word to describe how she's stepping into the woods, if I spelled it correctly, when she cautiously stepped. Now, if she's cautiously stepping, she's a little bit scared, isn't she? What do those woods look like? Okay, let's think. Remember I said scary? We're not using scary in year 3. How could we describe those woods to tell the reader that they are scary without saying they are scary? Thick, mist-filled woods. Okay. Can we make that even more sweet? When she cautiously stepped into the thick, mist-filled woods, which seemed to be filled with watching eyes. Okay, think about that feeling that you walk into somewhere dark and murky. It feels like there's something watching you. Actually, there was something watching you. It was a wolf. So we've gone from when she stepped into the wood, we've gone from that to our sentence now says, when she cautiously stepped into the thick, mist-filled woods, which seemed to be filled with watching eyes. Ooh. Okay, let's have a look at our last sentence. She felt very, in fact, we should probably put that before that sentence because it's still talking about nice things, but that doesn't matter. She felt very happy looking at the flowers as she passed them. First of all, we're going to take out very happy and put in a different feeling. How does flowers make you feel when you look at them? Think about last week, the sun was out a lot, wasn't it? And it was a lovely feeling. We felt really happy because that's that spring-like feeling and the sun was out. That made me feel quite joyous. She felt joyous looking at the bright, colourful flowers as she passed them. So straight away, those flowers are helping her to feel happy. Okay, can you see now how those sentences are far more interesting? Not only are they interesting though, they help you imagine what the author wants you to see. Okay, when we wrote this sentence, I wanted my readers to know that those woods were a little bit scary, but it all goes back to show the reader that they're scary without saying the woods are scary. Okay, it's all about using that descriptive language to make it more interesting for your reader. Okay. I'm going to show you what you're going to do for your task today, and then we're going to watch the rest of the story. So let me show you what you're going to do. So for your task today, we are just going to carry on with exactly what you have already done. Okay, they're quite good sentences, okay, but I want you to make them better, adding some adjectives. Okay, you might want to change the sentence round a little bit. Okay, so here it says you are a good, kind girl. Can we think of something better than good? Okay, here, what sort of spectacles are we talking about? What does the nose look like? What does the nightdress look like? Okay, here suddenly the door flew open and there stood the woodcutter with a very big axe that was very sharp. Well, first of all, we can put some description. I don't know what the woodcutter looks like. Okay, so we can first of all think about different adjectives for the woodcutter. Then, very big axe. We can think of better adjectives than very big axe and very sharp. We've got two verys in the same sentence, haven't we? So we can think of better words that we could write in there to go with our adjectives. And here, they opened up the picnic basket and had a very nice meal. Okay, we can think of better adjectives than that. So that is your task for today. You are going to rewrite those sentences. And actually, this is a really good opportunity to practice your handwriting as well. Okay, because I know it's really difficult at home to spend time thinking about that cursive handwriting. But just to get us a little bit into the practice of doing that, it's a really good opportunity to really show off your beautiful handwriting. So I'm going to stop that there. Okay, so that is your task. But first of all, I am going to play you the rest. Hopefully, if I can share this, I'm going to play you the rest of the video. Let's keep everything crossed, year 3. Keep those fingers crossed for me. And let's play the rest of the video.
Who was a bit scared, began to run as fast as she could toward Granny's cottage. The short way, and he ran as fast as a wolf can run. And he got to the cottage before the little girl. Quickly, he knocked on the door. Granny, who was very old, came to the door. "Just a minute," Just a minute. She opened the door. Huh? Oh! She saw the wolf. And the wolf grabbed Granny. He didn't have time to eat her, so he decided to lock her in the cupboard. And then when he'd done that, he took her sleeping hat and put it on his head. He took her spectacles and put them on his nose. And he took her nightdress and put it on. He was going to trick Little Red Riding Hood. And then he took the blanket, got into Granny's bed, and waited. Soon he heard Little Red Riding Hood's footsteps running towards the door. Little Red Riding Hood knocked on the door, and the wolf said, pulling the blanket up to his nose, "Come in, little girl." Red Riding Hood opened the door. "Oh, hello, Granny. It's good to see you. Granny, I know you're poorly, but Granny, what big eyes you've got." And the wolf said, "All the better to see you with, my dear." "Granny, what big ears you've got." "All the better to hear you with, my dear." "Granny, what big teeth you've got." "All the better to eat you with, my dear." Little Red Riding Hood, she wanted to run away. She turned, she ran towards the door, but the wolf was quicker, and he leapt out of bed, and he blocked the door. She couldn't get out. Little Red Riding Hood began to walk backwards. Then suddenly, the door flung open, and there stood the woodcutter with a very big axe that was very, very sharp. He raised the axe up and he killed the wolf. Little Red Riding Hood quickly said, "Where's Granny? Where's Granny?" There was a sound. It was coming from the cupboard. Little Red Riding Hood unlocked the cupboard, and Granny, who was very frightened, stepped out. "Oh, Granny, it's all right. It's all right." And Granny said, "Oh, my dear, you've saved me. Thank you, woodcutter. Thank you, Little Red Riding Hood." And the three of them went to the kitchen. They opened up the picnic basket, and they had a very nice meal. And that is the end of the story.
Oh, and there we go. The woodcutter came and he saved the day. So I hope you enjoyed that. That is our story for the next couple of weeks. Like I said, there's always lots of different versions of fairy tales, but that is the version that we are going to be working with. And we look forward to doing some more literacy lessons with you later in the week, all about Little Red Riding Hood.